Good afternoon. We are with Brian Mortimore, who's the HR guy at Kent District Library. He's got a regular title, but we'll just call him the HR guy. And today we're doing the second part of our human resources webinar. And I'm going to turn it over right away to Brian Mortimore from Kent District Library. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate being here. And everyone, I just wanted to share with you, many of you have been through a workshop with me in the past where we talk about performance management. And those workshops are usually closer to a day-long kind of program. So we're going to be hitting the highlights of that. And Cheryl asked me to kind of give sort of the best and brightest of that, that program. I like to call it the ABCs of coaching. And there's some reasons why I call it the ABCs of coaching, and I'll share that with you here in a minute. But one of the things I like to also recognize is that, you know, what we're talking about here today is as pertinent now as it was 10, 15 years ago. And I believe it's going to be pertinent, you know, going into the future. So it's not like this is a topic that you'll say is timely, but will, you know, kind of get long, you know, in the tooth at some point in time. No, coaching never goes out of form or out of practice for managers, and it's something that's very important to do. And the feedback I've gotten over the years of doing these different performance management programs is that having the ABCs defined like this is really, really helpful to managers. So whether you are somebody who has, you know, a master's in business administration or has never attended any kind of formal schooling or education around management, this workshop, I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's talk about the ABCs and what that's all about. So there are really, I like to maintain, there are really three types of employees that work for us. There's the A-list employees who are exceptional. Then they're always performing very consistently. Their work is just above board, and everybody really loves those employees, right? I mean, if you think about it right now, you could probably imagine some of those people on your own team. And then there's the B list, and the B list folks are those who are always, you know, they're solid contributors. They occasionally have errors though. So not quite as consistent as an A-list player, but there's somebody that we enjoy having on our team because we know that they work hard and they do good, and they're just, you know, a valued member. And then there's that C-list group, and that's the C-list that we tend to talk about most of all because they occupy most of our time as managers. And C-list players are relevant and present in every organization. It's rare that they're not, but these are the folks who are usually a little less experienced. They might be prone to some error, and occasionally they might actually even be failing a little bit in terms of, you know, the nature of their work and how well they are consistently performing. So we're going to talk about those three types of employees, and we're going to go through some real life scenarios today where we talk about how best to coach those people and how to coach somebody in a way that can actually lift them up. If they're a C player, lift them up to a B player. If they're a B player, lift them up to an A player. Okay. So let's talk about A-list coaching for starters. There's a few things that you can do. Like most people think, okay, I've got this A player, you know, I don't have to do anything with them. You know, there's just nothing necessary because they're so good. Well, that's not true. I mean, you need to get them involved with things. You need to delegate responsibility to them. By delegating responsibility to them, you're showing them that you value them as an A-list player and that they are somebody who is trustworthy and competent. Provide them training when they seek it or when they're interested. Give them the opportunity to grow professionally, because if you don't, they might start to have less interest in their work and then slip from becoming an A player to a B player. You want to stretch them. You want to give them stretch goals. So things that maybe they haven't done in the past, these are the folks that you want to challenge with new ideas and new opportunities, new goals, and celebrate their successes. So often we take this A-list group for granted and we just assume that they're going to do great work, but You want to make sure that you're celebrating when they do things well. And then you're going to want to spend time with them as well. So one of the rewards of being an A-list player is that you spend more time with the boss, right? You get to maybe influence the direction of things, or share your thoughts and ideas. So that's what you want to do with your A-list players. And of course, you want to promote them. So often I've heard managers come to me and say, I've got two employees. They've both applied for the promotion. We only have so many full-time jobs. This one is just really, fantastic. The other one is inconsistent, but the one who's inconsistent has been here for like 10 years longer than the other. I feel like it's her turn and I should give it to the one who's been here longest. No. They've been inconsistent. You want to promote the A-list players. Those are the people who you want to promote because they'll feel rewarded. They'll be likely to stick around, and others will observe that behavior and they'll know what they need to do in order to be promoted. Let's talk about B-list coaching. With B-list folks, there's a series of questions you're going to want to ask yourself. Are your expectations clear? Are they reasonable and are they fair? If these people are sometimes inconsistent, then you want to make sure that you're consistent with your expectations and make sure that what you're expecting is both reasonable and fair. Have they received the training necessary to do the job well and to do it consistently well? I've had that happen too, where sometimes the supervisor says, gee, I've got this person who's pretty good. I recently asked them to take on some new tasks, but they seem to be faltering. And the first question I'll ask is, tell me about the training they received. And they'll say, I put them through the same training I put everybody through it. Well, maybe they need to go through some things again. Maybe they need a little further instruction, because if you believe in this person, if they are a solid contributor, there's no reason that they ought not be with the right amount of training. Third point, do they understand why it's important to do the job correctly? I've seen that happen too, where sometimes people might take shortcuts and their supervisors get upset because this person's taking a shortcut in the way that they do their job. And in so doing, if they ask about it, they learn that the employee might be very, very proud of the time and effort that's being saved, but not necessarily realize that they're also reducing the quality of their work or the impact on other people because of the shortcuts that they're taking. So it's important for them to understand of why it's so important to do the job correctly. And then ask yourself, are you holding them accountable to that job and to doing it well? Very often we give a pass to certain people. Maybe we like them, maybe we don't want to have conflict, whatever the reason, we kind of give them a pass. And one of the things I like to say, and I've been quoted over and over in a variety of forums on this line, is that the lowest level of behavior we allow is the highest level of behavior we can require. So if you have an employee who is performing at a somewhat subpar level in some respect, then that's about it. And if you allow that, that's about as high a level that you can require of anybody. So keep that in mind too, in terms of holding people accountable to do the job well. Ask yourself, do I consistently recognize and reward positive performance? Some people are really great at that. Others, it comes, it's a little more difficult to remember to recognize and reward people for the job well done. And ask yourself also if you've removed any obstacles to their performance. So it could be that there's a process in place. It could be that there is another individual who feels like something should be done differently, that they're, in a little bit of conflict with. Ask yourself, have you removed those obstacles so that they can perform the job well? That's B-list coaching stuff. You're going to want to build their confidence. You're going to want to give them feedback and provide them access to resources and information so that they can excel and do their job well. Think about all the different times in your own career when maybe somebody gave you an opportunity or somebody gave you access to some information and resources so that you could do your job well, and what a difference that made. So don't lose sight of that. As a manager, you became a manager most likely because somebody believed in you. Somebody took it upon themselves to give you access to new training, whatever it might be. You're going to want to teach them new things, recognize them for the good work they're doing. And here's another little secret: partner them with A-list players. So if you've got a B-list player and you want them to elevate their game, have them work with an A-list player on a project. Maybe, your A-list players typically design the summer reading club. Have your B-list players work with the A-list players on that so that they in turn can learn from them. And like learning through osmosis just by being close, right? But it can happen, and very often those A-list qualities rub off on those B players so that they in turn become A players. The goal, of course, is to have everybody be an A player, right? That would be ideal. So what you want to do is make sure that your B players have all the necessary attention so that they keep from falling into that C-list category. All right, C-list coaching. This is a good time. You're going to take a deep breath. I'm going to take a deep breath, because these are the folks that are generally problematic on some level or another. Maybe not every day, maybe not every week, but as I'm talking about the folks who sometimes are uncooperative or emotionally unstable or chronically late, doing the bare minimum to get by, and I like to say inconsistency is their only consistent behavior. Very often have a bad attitude. These are the folks that take up the majority of your time. I like to say the 80-20 rule at its finest: 80% of your time spent on 20% of the people. So why do we have them in our organization? Well, we just do, right? I mean, if everybody can't be an A-list player, but in an ideal world, you would coach these individuals to the point where they become B-list players and eventually A-list players. And as I like to say also, for a C-list player, it's possible to take them from being a to either become a reformed employee or a former employee, because long term you can't maintain a C-list. You just can't. I mean, it's just emotionally taxing on everybody in your building, and they're not adding enough value. And in a day and age when libraries are always under scrutiny for the amount of taxpayer dollars and how those are being used, and how service is being provided, you just don't have room for these folks. So you want to coach them up. You want to coach them up. And while we're not going to necessarily dive into the details of progressive discipline to the point of termination today, that is sometimes what has to happen. Ideally, very rare. But more often than not, you can coach a C player person up so that you don't have to ever go down the road of disciplinary action. We're going to talk about that. Let's talk about coaching that C-list person. And there's a lot of notes here, okay? And I've got on the subsequent slides, there's going to be a lot of notes. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to publish these slides for you all, so that you could see this stuff. But the step one in this process is make sure that you've set the stage, and just kind of go back to some of the things I've talked about already. Are your expectations clear? Are they reasonable and fair? Has the person received the kind of training necessary to do the job? Are you consistent? Do you recognize good performance when it happens? Very often it's hard for us to recognize good performance when it happens with a C-list player because that's the source of our frustration, that person, right? And so even when they do something well, it's hard for us to, necessarily want to sing their praises, because in the back of our minds, we know that it's probably just a day or two away, and I'll have to deal with a complaint about this person. So make sure that you're recognizing good performance when it happens. Make sure you've removed any performance obstacles, and that they have been informed why it's important to do the job correctly. So step two, this is the stuff, I kind of came up with this little template a while ago, and I've heard over and over that this is super helpful to people. I like to document the concern to clarify the issue. Okay. So here's the template for it right here. And you're going to see I've got space in here for you to insert someone's name and the specifics of the problem. And these are the talking points. And the talking points are this: the problem with so-and-so's performance is, and then you'd insert the problem. which is different than my expectations. And the impact on our team and customers is as follows. And that's kind of the template for clarifying the issue, at least in your own head. And you're going to use the same template to talk to them. And you'll see how that plays out when Cheryl and I kind of role play some of this stuff in a little bit. So speaking of role play, that's step number 3. You got to practice this session. I know a lot of people make them really uncomfortable to role play, but listen, there is no better way to prepare for having a difficult conversation than to actually have it once or twice or 3 times, maybe with yourself in a mirror or with another colleague. Find a trusted colleague that you can sit across the table with and practice the session and role play it in such a way so that you're kind of prepared for the responses. You're kind of, all set and ready for that moment. Because I'll tell you, when you actually sit and give coaching, particularly coaching around a problem or a concern, it causes a lot of what I call, internal bio responses. Okay. So like your breathing gets a little shallower, your heart rate picks up, the adrenaline starts to move, and all this stuff makes it so that it's more and more difficult for you to give this feedback. But it's important, very, very important for you as a manager to be able to give this feedback. So role play that, make sure you devote enough time to represent the full meaning of the message, identify the issues, potential responses, all that kind of stuff. All right. And then this 4th step is to make sure you select the right location. This is not a conversation for the break room. This is not a conversation in the presence of others. In an ideal world, you would use such discretion with location that others in the building wouldn't even know that you're having this conversation. In other words, it wouldn't be telegraphed that you're meeting with this person at 3:00 in your office and you're not to be disturbed, that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that you use as much discretion as possible. Have some potential solutions in mind. And then step 6 is to actually meet. And one of the things I like to say to people when I'm coaching them on this stuff is make sure that you're really clear right up front about why you're meeting. So often I've seen it happen where somebody calls for a meeting and then the other party enters the room and they spend time talking about the most recent program they did, or they spend time talking about summer reading club, or they talk about some other initiative, the library's millage that's coming up. They basically dance around every subject except the one they're there to meet on, so as to kind of establish a nice, warm, happy kind of environment. And it's been my experience that when you do that, in the end, people reflect back on that conversation and they know that you ultimately had something to talk to them about, but you spent all this other time talking about things that were of less significance to them, and they come to resent that. So I like to open meetings really with, hey, thanks for meeting with me. We're meeting because I have a concern about your performance. And I mean, just like that, it's just like right out there. And then here's that template again. Okay. In this case, let's say, for example, that I'm the employee and we're going to have Cheryl be the supervisor in this situation, but I'm the employee and I have friends that stop into the library from time to time. And when they do, I tend to stop everything I'm doing and visit with my friends. And every now and then I might tell them about a new service that we have, or something like that, just to make it feel like it's a legitimate, kind of, reference question, if you will. But at the end of the day, we all know I'm enjoying the fact that my friends have stopped in and 15, 20 minutes have gone by. I'm still chatting with them out there on the floor and I'm not helping my colleagues. And you can well imagine why that would be a problem. So I'm going to have Cheryl actually read this and listen to my response. And we haven't really rehearsed this, so it might be just a little sketchy at first, but just bear with us because we're learning here too. Okay. So that's the other thing about this stuff. Don't feel like you have to be an expert. We never stop learning. Okay. So suppose Cheryl just invited me into her office, and she's going to deliver this line. and just watch. I'm going to give you what is a most likely kind of response to this situation. And then I'll talk about some other potential responses too. But go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay. Hi, Brian. Thanks for meeting with me today. We're
Sure.
meeting because I have a concern about your performance. The problem with your performance is that when your friends stop by the library, you tend to stop what you're doing and visit them for excessive periods of time, which is different from my expectation that such interruptions wouldn't last more than 1 to 3 minutes. The impact is you're not tending to your work, resulting in more work for others. Do you understand? What will you do differently?
Yeah, I guess so. I think I guess I didn't realize that it was that big of a problem, but yeah, I'll be mindful of it. I'll make sure I don't do that going forward.
Great.
Okay, so right there, that's like the most common response to that situation. I'm not going to suggest to you that they're all going to go that easy. Okay, now, Cheryl, you asked a question. Do you understand? Now, generally, wait for me to acknowledge it.
Whoops.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's okay. I didn't tell you that. And I've got the next question right there. So, but wait for me to acknowledge it. If I don't understand, if I want to, kind of like disagree or whatever, then you're going to just kind of hear what I have to say, but then you're going to reiterate the concern. And this is where being a broken record really helps, because sometimes people need to hear the concern 2 or 3 times to really process what you're saying. And so what I would say is, do you understand? And let's say Cheryl says, no, I don't understand. Betsy does this all the time, and so does Marie, and I don't think there's a problem. And in which case I might say, well, if others are doing it as well, that might be something I need to look into. But for now, I want to talk with you about the behavior I've observed in you and how I recognize there's an impact on your work not being completed and others have to actually do more work. Do you understand the concern?
All of a sudden we have swapped roles, Brian.
Yeah, right, just like that. I know. So,
Yeah.
but that's kind of like, that's an example of when somebody might get just a little bit defensive or a little bit argumentative or whatnot. And if somebody gets like way overblown off the charts, argumentative, there's a different approach for that too. This is assuming, and this is going to be coaching that is going to work 90% of the time for this situation. Okay. If somebody gets really overblown, I would repeat myself a couple of times. And then eventually, I think at that point, if they absolutely disagreed, I'd say, look, I understand that you're absolutely disagreeing with me on this. Um, Having heard that and having heard your disagreement, I also recognize that I'm going to stand firm in what my expectations are from you, and I'll be putting it in writing so that you have that, and I'll be observing going forward to make sure that you change your behavior accordingly. And I would just leave it at that. Okay. So step 7, if the employee, and we're kind of there, we're kind of talking about that. If the employee doesn't acknowledge the problem, you're just going to cycle back and you're going to be that broken record, and you're going to continue to explain that. Now, I say continue and be a broken record. Usually 2 to 3 times will do it. In fact, in my workshops, I've actually had people who've role played this with me. I've told them at no matter what, no cost, do not agree with me. I want to show people what to do after 2 or 3 disagreements on this. And that's when then I say, hey, listen, I hear what you're saying. I disagree with you. It is my expectation that you do this going forward. I'm going to be putting this in writing to you so that I know that you have it. And I'll be observing and watching this behavior going forward. And it's just kind of your gentle way of reminding them that you're the boss. So step 8 is have the employee identify a solution. So they might be a little less than committed on identifying that solution. They might say something to you along the lines of, well, I don't really think it's a problem. And you'd say, well, did you hear my concern though? Did you understand what I had to say? And they might say, yeah, okay, well, recognizing that I do have that concern, even if you don't fully embrace it, I need to know from you what it is you intend to do differently so that I don't have this concern going forward. And that would be a good way to kind of have them come up with their solution. And if they are absolutely, not buying in, then that's when you want to make sure they understand the potential consequence of not following through. Like, let's say they come up with a solution. They say, well, if my friends come in, I'll make sure I don't talk to them for more than 5 minutes. Great. I think that's perfect. Maybe they don't come to that kind of solution. Maybe they say, gee, I don't know. I guess, I'm just going to have to do my best, but, cut me some slack because everybody else around here does it. Then what you might say to them is, well, listen, I am going to be monitoring everybody on this, as I have been, and I'll address it with them individually as I see it necessary to do so. But understand that if this were to continue, it could result in disciplinary action for you. And I don't want that to happen. And that's why I'm asking you to come up with a solution and to be sure to address it. Okay. Sometimes you can request an action plan. And so very often if somebody says or seems a little reluctant to commit to a course of action, I'll ask them to articulate their action plan in writing to me. That way I know that they've given it some thought. And then at the end of all this, I kind of reinforce their commitment and I close the session by saying, thanks, I think your approach is going to work. And I want you to know that I appreciate you being committed to following through with it. And it's just really that easy. I mean, that's the whole process right there. So with that in mind, I know I'm moving my screen around a little bit. Give me just a second. I want to take us back to the C-list coaching, and Cheryl and I just walked through one scenario. Let's walk through another. Okay. And I'm going to have Cheryl be the supervisor again. And in this case, I'm the employee and I am chronically late for work. So about every second or third shift, I'm likely to show up anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes late for the shift. Cheryl's mentioned it to me once or twice before. Other colleagues of mine have mentioned it to me. We all know it's a problem because it has happened almost since, maybe since the first of the year for whatever reason. It's been going on for a while. Or maybe let's say it's been happening ever since I picked up another job and I started college classes again, something like that. Having a little trouble with time management. So this is an issue that's been going on for a while. Everybody knows that it's truly happening. We're going to have Cheryl kind of prep the meeting. So Cheryl, talk to me a little bit about, that step one. What are some of the things that you would do for the employee that you're about to speak to who comes in late?
Are you talking, Brian, before I'm actually sitting with that person?
Before you sit with me.
Oh, okay.
Look at the screen too, by the way.
Yeah, I want to make sure that everybody's treated, the same way, and that I've made my expectations clear. That I expect people to show up, maybe even a little early for their shift, because sometimes they're replacing somebody on a desk or, preventing somebody from being able to leave that might have, a need to leave right then. Let's see. Consistently recognize and reward positive. Yeah. Anyways, I can't read your screen anymore, but all of those things. Good.
No, you were nailing them all. So that's
okay.
Great. So now your concerns, you kind of started to do that with documenting the concerns. The problem with Brian's behavior performance is that he shows up late, which is different than your expectations. The impact on the team and the customers is the fact that, people can't rely on me to be there to relieve them from their shift. It causes angst and anxiety for others, inconsistent performance or inconsistent customer service, those kinds of things. And you all already kind of alluded to this, but you didn't quite say my phrase, which is the lowest level of behavior we allow is the highest level of behavior we can require. And just imagine if everybody showed up late. Imagine how problematic that'd be. And very often I see it's like, oh, it's no big deal. That's just her. That's just him. He only does it every, once a week or so. But if everybody did that, that'd be a problem. So then the next step is practice the session. So in an ideal world, you'd have another colleague that you could call up and you could say, hey, I want to run this session by you. And, Cheryl, they might give you a call in your cooperative. They might say, I want to call that HR guy down at KDL and run the scenario by him. You're welcome to give me a call. We'll role play a scenario together. It'd be great fun. Um, and then you're going to select the right location, have a solution in mind. And then here's the script again, right? Problem with your performance is, and then which is different than my expectations. The impact is, and then followed by the question, do you understand? Wait for the response. What will you do differently? Okay. You want to do it right now, Cheryl?
Great, sure.
All right.
All right. Hi, Brian. Thanks for meeting with me today. I need to talk to you about some performance issues. So I'll get right to it. The problem with your performance is that you're consistently late. It's either 5 or 7 or 10 minutes late. People kind of know this about you. I don't know what has caused it, and I'd be glad to listen, but the bottom line is we need you. It's our expectation that you're on time to work. And the impact is that you're preventing other people from getting off the desk, a public service desk, or getting to an appointment or leaving when they are allowed to leave. So basically you're impacting other people in the workplace. And that's not really what our expectations are. We expect that people are on time and can relieve the next person. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Maybe. I mean, I'm not going to say I haven't been late on a few occasions, but I guess I don't really know why it's a big problem. I mean, it doesn't seem like anybody else has had a problem with it. Everybody here seems to like me, and this is the first time I've heard anybody say anything about it.
I don't think it's an issue of whether people like you or not, Brian. I think more it's an issue of consistency and expectation of employees, because if I didn't have this expectation of everyone, we would probably not be as successful in our public service. Things might leak through to the public that people are disgruntled at each other for not being on time, things like that. So there is an impact on the whole staff. And, I have observed this with you, Brian. If there are other people doing this similar thing, I would, of course, talk to them as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's been kind of a rough year for me. I started back into college classes again, and I've been really busy with that. And then I got real busy with my second job. I mean, this has been a good job here at the library too, but Amazon pays really well. So I've had to go work nights there and whatnot. So
Oh my goodness.
I've had a lot going on, and my dog's been sick, and there's been a few things going on in my own household that I just don't want to get into right now, but it's been a tough year for me.
Well, I hear you, Brian, and I appreciate that there are other factors that are impacting you here. And
Yeah,
I hope that you will appreciate there's other things that impact other people. So we just have to level out the expectation here at work.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try not to be late. I'll do my best, and maybe one of the things I can do is put like an alert on my phone, so that because it seems like I'm going to be there on time, but then for whatever reason, seems like I'm late a lot. So I'll put an alert on my phone just before my shift.
Well, that would help if you approached it with some different types of tools, possibly alerting yourself within time to get to work. That would be great.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Okay. So great job, Cheryl. At this point, you just close it out. You just say, hey, thanks so much. I appreciate your commitment to this. And, and and, we'll assume all being well that this problem is resolved, you know?
Mhm. Right.
So, yeah, and you did a nice job. I threw a couple of zingers at you there. One of the things is very often when we confront somebody, they instantly go to this, this bad place in their head about, oh man, now my boss is getting down on me, and boy, everything's been just going wrong for me lately. And so, let me tell you, I've had a hard time with class. I've had a hard time with my second job. I'm not sleeping well. They just go down this laundry list of
Oh,
stacking all these issues. And we as supervisors who are empathetic, we care and we feel bad about the situation. So very often we get distracted from the reason why we called the meeting. And then we want to help them solve all those other problems.
I've had that
Yeah.
experience
So,
before. I've had people tell me all sorts of personal information and start
right.
sobbing and things like that. And it's been tricky. It's,
Right. And I'm
yeah,
not suggesting that we don't become empathetic in those moments, but use the right dosage of empathy in those moments, because it might mean that, if something, I mean, I've had some people drop some serious stuff, some real serious stuff in those meetings. And
yeah,
you might have to just like press pause on the reason why you're holding a meeting and focus on the other issue. That might be.
yeah.
But very often that's not the case. Very often you can hear them out and say, yeah, it sounds like you're dealing with a lot there. At the same time, we got to make sure though that you're here to work on time. So what can you do to help make that happen? And so you just sort of bring them right back, like, okay, you kind of unloaded all that stuff, but let me bring you right back to why we're here. Okay. And so, yeah, great job on that. And let's see, there was another scenario we were going to cover. Oh, I've got it right here. So this is the scenario where another employee is kind of being unkind to others, and in turn, they're giving others the silent treatment and whatnot. So why don't once again, why don't you be the supervisor? I'll be the employee who's being unkind to others and giving others the silent treatment. And this one's a little trickier than the last one. The last one was really cut and dry, but this one is, you're not only acknowledging the behavior, but you're also kind of giving me an opportunity to say, what's going on? Why would I just in the last month start behaving really differently and being unkind? You've not seen that from me before, So, but open with the problem with your performance is, we're observing you're being unkind to others by, giving them silent treatment, which is different than your expectation that everybody would be, fully engaged with one another, helpful and supportive of and kind to one another. The impact is that the team is not feeling necessarily supported, and you're observing that in others too, right? So why don't you open with that, and then I'll respond in real role play fashion, and we'll just kind of work through it a little bit, okay? Oh, you're muted again, Cheryl.
Okay.
There
Hi,
you go.
Brian. Sorry for being muted. Hi, Brian. Thank you for meeting with me today. Have a seat. And I want to talk a bit about your work performance. Most specifically, how you're getting along with your coworkers, basically. Um, the problem is that I've been hearing that you've been given the cold shoulder to people, not really been talking and communicative. They've basically been unkind to people, not giving them the time of day. What's going on, Brian? Is that something that you're recognizing? That's different from my expectation that people would talk to each other in a work environment about work and exchange a pleasantry now and then, but not be off-putting and not responding to your coworkers. So that's different from my expectation. Do you understand what I'm saying, and do you recognize that in your behavior?
I think I understand. I've not felt good about the way some people are just not, in my opinion, doing their job like they ought to be. Some people don't contribute to shutting down at night. Like there's other people who, when we're all supposed to be helping patrons wrap up for the day just before closing, we're supposed to be shutting down computers and whatnot. We got some people who just don't participate in that. They just kind of go and they grab their purse and get their coat on, and they kind of wait for the rest of us by the back door. And it's like, clearly we can't leave until we get these patrons out the door and get them what they need. So that's, I
So
don't
you
like,
have frustration about your coworkers not pulling their share
they're
of
not,
responsibility?
yeah, I mean, they're not doing their part. And when they're not doing their part, it makes me not want to help them. I mean, I know, you know, Susan usually complains about me not helping with the book drop and whatnot, but Susan's the first one to go get her coat and purse when it comes time to leave. And we still got patrons in the building, so it's just really frustrating to me. And I don't know, I
So
wish it was.
it causes you, Brian, to not want to help with other jobs that other staff are doing because you've found that they have not been willing to do it in the past?
Well, yeah, that's kind of my observation of, and I know maybe that's not the most mature response on my part. Maybe I should just suck it up and just do it anyway. But it seems like they've been skating for a long time on a lot of different duties and a lot of different things. Just like you look at the go, if you check the chart on cleaning the break room, I mean, you'll see the who's initialed it and who hasn't. Some people don't take their turn on stuff like that. And so, yeah, it's very frustrating. And so I
Have
can't.
you asked directly when these things happen, instead of giving people the cold shoulder and walking away? Have you asked them if they would go with you to empty the book drop or do some of these other duties that need to be done?
I haven't because I don't like confrontation.
Mm.
So I just try to avoid confrontation at all costs. And but I
Well,
don't.
that's tricky because we are in a work environment and we do have to do certain of the tasks together. Um,
Yeah.
and I can talk to other people about when I see them not doing the duties that are assigned. The reason why I'm talking to you is because it's become kind of a problem that you're not talking to your coworkers, you're giving them the cold shoulder, you're kind of blowing them off.
Right.
And now that I understand that you're disappointed that they're not pulling their weight in your mind, this is a whole different light shined on this issue. So I will be more observant of what's going on, but I would like for you to talk to your coworkers, instead of completely avoiding them and giving them the cold shoulder.
Okay.
And I understand that it's hard, if it's confrontational and you're feeling
Yeah.
awkward about that.
I
Is there
can do.
anything I can do to help you with that?
No, I can do that. I mean, I like everybody here. I always have, so that's not, it's just something that's kind of been bothering me for a while. I'm glad that we're talking now though, because um now at least, and I'll do my part, I'll do my best. And if I have a problem or concern, what, do I just bring it to you then, or?
Oh, that'd be great. If you have difficulty the first time that you try doing something differently, which would be to talk to your coworker and try and work it out with that person about helping to do the duties that need to be done before you leave work. If you have any difficulty with that, I'm glad to talk to you again. Of course, being very supportive.
Perfect. Cheryl, you did great with this. Now, what I want to just point out for our viewers at home here is that this is not just cut and dry. This isn't black and white. There's a lot of gray in this stuff, right? And so Cheryl's kind of addressing me with this concern about me giving people the cold shoulder, but right away she hears that I'm having a hard time with my coworkers right now because a lot of them, at least in my opinion, are not doing what I think they ought to be doing. And so as a supervisor, if we haven't noticed that, then it doesn't mean that we start seeking this conflict out per se, but it does sort of alert our senses a little, right? So that okay, I got to start paying closer attention, because what Brian's saying is certain people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing at, closing procedures, or break room procedures, or, workroom procedures, whatever those procedures are. Brian claims they're not doing it, and that's what's got him so frustrated. Now, you also have to consider, what's Brian's credibility here? Is he someone who's been with us for a couple of years? We've never had this problem in him before. And this is, kind of a new and different emerging behavior, in which case, that would kind of lend some credence or credibility to his claim. You also want to be mindful of the fact that, maybe he's got other stuff going on and he just wants to point the finger elsewhere. But I don't sense, whenever I have a situation like this, when you confront somebody and not doing their job, and right away they point out that others aren't doing their job, very often they're right. Very often they've got a legitimate concern. And remember what I said, the lowest level of behavior that we allow is the highest level of behavior we can require. And that's what their comments are getting at. Like, if they're not doing it, why should I do it? Or if they're doing something, why shouldn't I do that same thing? And so that's where the whole fairness and equity piece comes in. And you'll recall that, from some of the other coaching comments earlier about, am I being fair and equitable? So great job, Cheryl. It was a great conversation. What I liked about this one is you got to see how the very scripted piece on coaching became or evolved into a conversation. And I think a pretty good conversation, not one where Cheryl was necessarily getting down on me, just reminding me of what the expectations are. And then where I was saying, well, okay, but here's what I've observed and here's what I've witnessed. And she's sort of acknowledging that, and me saying, okay, I'll keep an eye on that. But in the meantime, this is what I need you to do. So not losing track of the reason why we're talking in the first place. So I thought that was great. Great job, Cheryl. And I do want to just, before we close out here, I just want to acknowledge that this stuff is not easy, but very often we overthink just how difficult it is. It's really,
Yes.
it's really not as difficult as we very often make it out to be. It's about having good open dialogue, open communication. The template is there. The reason that I provide the template is so that people have something to say. Like you did each and every time we did this, Sherry, you said, the reason we're meeting is there's a concern about your performance. Good. We didn't dance around it. We didn't, we don't have to wonder. I don't have to sit there and make small talk about your vacation recently, or my vacation, or my, recent plans to do some new program or whatever, and then wonder, why are we really meeting? Have that in the back of my mind. You got right to it. That's great. Then you outlined the problem with my performance. You outline the fact that that's different than your expectations of me, and you outline the impact on the entire team or the library. And then you sought clarity to make sure I understood that, and ask the question, what do I plan to do differently going forward if it doesn't already emerge? And then, like I said before, there's a lot of ways you can follow up. You can ask somebody to put it in writing. You can put it in writing to them. You can, say, hey, look, I'm going to send you an email that's going to kind of commemorate all this, with what your action plan is, what I heard your action plan to be. You can do that if you want. A lot of different ways to handle it. Either way, that becomes part of your supervisory coaching file. So the next time you meet with somebody, what date you met with them and on what topics, and you can reflect on it. And if they're doing better, by all means, you want to celebrate that and thank them. Say, hey, Brian, I met with you, 2 months ago on this topic of being kind of quiet and giving people the cold shoulder. I haven't seen any of that since we met. In fact, I've seen quite the opposite. And I want to thank you for that. And that just reinforces to me, the employee, what's expected of me, what the expectation is. So that's a really good thing. Yeah. So you're muted again, Cheryl, just to give you a heads up. But with that, I'm going to wrap up unless there's anything else that you'd like me to cover, Cheryl.
Brian, I was just going to actually ask a question that I've heard before, and this session, I'm sure it's a whole nother session to talk about having to document somebody to the point of separation.
Yeah, right.
A lot of our libraries, there's not that many staff. So this scenario is great. What we've talked about so far with more than one employee, sometimes there's just one. Sometimes that person is not very assertive themselves, but has a spouse or somebody in their life that that is getting information that may not be accurate about their job and how they're being treated. Is there any insight that you might have to reduce the amount of impact an outside person might have on internal human resources situation?
So I've had situations come up where somebody's spouse or, a young person's parent might call, might want to talk or be part of a conversation. I maintain a strong policy that I do not communicate with anybody other than the employee about personnel issues. And so that just sort of like eliminates all that. That way
What
I
if
don't.
that person requested that that there be somebody else in the room? Maybe it's not even somebody they know, just a third party or
Yeah. Well, our policies at KDL don't allow for it. So I guess I would direct people to their board or to their own legal counsel for that. But because there's a number of situations where you could see that might happen, and usually nothing good comes of it. Usually the person who they wanted present isn't just there for emotional support. They're there to make a case or argue on their behalf or something. And you got to remember, you don't have a formal relationship with this other person in the room. You only have a formal employer-employee relationship with the person that you seek to address. So it's very, very difficult to have somebody else in the room and to be a part of that. So
And you
I can't.
usually have an appeal process in your policies for
Yeah,
the individual.
so if somebody felt that they had received some like disciplinary action inappropriately or whatever, then there's a process by which they can go to the director or go to the board, whatever,
Right.
and actually provide that kind of maybe kind of almost like a hearing, if you will. Like if you don't have a union and you have sort of like a grievance,
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like a grievance hearing where somebody says, look, I think I got, kind of a bad deal, or somebody had bad information and I want to set the record clear. Yeah.
So that might be what happened if somebody's spouse wanted to get involved and whatnot. You could say, no, we only just deal with the person who's employed here, but there is here's the policy. And if you feel you need to grieve, or, you haven't had enough communication with your supervisor, or it's at loggerheads, here you go.
Now, we have had situations where like people said, hey, I don't like the fact I got written up over this issue. What recourse do I have? And we let them know, well, this is going in your personnel file. And per KDL policy, you're welcome to submit a written rebuttal to that. It can be 2 pages. And, so I fully anticipate that there's spouses and significant others that are helping to write those things. That's okay. It's important for us to receive that and see what their position is on the matter. And sometimes people, just by act of putting their position on the matter in writing, it helps them to get something off their chest. And sometimes it helps us to gain further insight or glean further insight on the issue. So, it's not just an exercise, I guess is what I'm saying. It's something that can be quite beneficial. And that might be a way for somebody's significant other to kind of have a say, in the issue, because at the end of the day, I'm just not going to allow it. I'm not going to allow somebody else to bring a friend, kind of thing.
Well, I think this has been very helpful, this dialogue and the practice. And I'm here to say I would practice with anybody who wanted to practice with me. It's I'm sure becomes easier and easier the more you do it.
It does.
So,
It does. A lot of times I'll have managers say, Brian, I don't know how you come up with the words so easily, to say in these situations. And it's just because of what you just said, Cheryl. For years, I've been, kind of the role play recipient with managers in every organization I've been a part of. And um, so I kind of live vicariously through them. It's not that I've had so many one-on-one coaching conversations with people. It's that, I've had to do this with other managers so that they can in turn deliver those messages and make sure that they're delivering them in a way that's beneficial to the employee and the employer.
yeah, great.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. This has been
You're
very helpful. And between the last time and this time, I think we've got a lot of information from you. And we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I could help, and it's my pleasure. So get a hold of me if you ever need anything. Okay.
All righty. Thank you
Okay.
very much. And I guess we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Bye-bye.